Okay, so continuing with our foundational stuff for the course, one of the other things that the overview of the chapter promised was divvying up media history into three very general sort of eras. When they say era, it means kind of like period of time that is cohesive in some way, that shares the same sort of fundamental attributes. So in media, you'll notice that they basically seem to have to do with particular types of technologies. And that is basically true, but just be careful that it's not sort of individual inventions that mark the different eras so much as particular sort of types of technology in terms of what they fundamentally can and can't do. So to start, for instance, the print era arguably starts with the printing press as a mass media phenomenon. We're going to talk about the printing press in a subsequent video, and you'll see it on subsequent slides as a particular invention. But really what it does is it ushers in this period of actually, say, several hundred years where mechanized printing is sort of the dominant mode of media in circulation generally. So that, books or newspapers or magazines eventually, all of the above fits in with the so-called print era. And the electronic era after it also illustrates, again, how it's not sort of one individual invention so much as a couple of media technologies maybe that sort of have a sort of fundamental characteristic in terms of what they can and can't do. So the telegraph in the mid-19th century, really sort of 1840s, is arguably the first medium of electronic mass communication. It's even arguably not mass communication because telegrams went from a single point to another single point. They just sort of facilitated mass communication, and that specifically newspapers utilized telegraphy a lot to get stories from far away. And so what's typically said by media historians about sort of what's so fundamentally different about telegraphy in the mid-19th century is that it takes transportation and communication and separates them. Beforehand, in order for communication to happen across distance, a human being had to physically traverse that distance on a train or a horse or running or whatever. But the telegraph, the transmission of coded messages on a wire from one point to an electronic receiver that then has somebody decoding the messages, means the message can travel independently of human transportation. So fundamentally decoupling transportation from communication. And similarly, commercial broadcasting is just another part of what they call the electronic era, because it's sort of mass communication being fundamentally reshaped around the use of electricity to carry messages, across wires or eventually with broadcasting through the electromagnetic spectrum in just the air. And we will talk at length again about television and radio, the two main technologies involved in commercial broadcasting, when we get to our units on TV and radio in a couple of weeks. And finally, the digital era. We have this period sort of roughly, kind of last 30 years or so, where increasingly, it's not that it's not using electricity, because of course computers do use a lot of electricity, right? It's that the mode of information encoding is different in the digital era. So whether it's a phone, a computer, there's lots of other digitized technologies, like even, telephone calls are use digital technologies now. Essentially, it means that instead of physical waves actually traveling from one point to another, information is electronically kind of broken up into this code of you hear people say ones and zeros sometimes, right? And so it's a fundamentally different way of encoding the information that marks the difference between the digital era using computers for a variety of different purposes and the electronic era of sort of commercial broadcasting and the telegraph and radio.